We are officially less than 100 days until the midterm elections. Right now, President Trump is in battleground Michigan, focusing on the most important midterm issue, the economy. It all comes as energy prices are riding a roller coaster of ups and downs from the war against Iran. Meanwhile, Democrats are grappling with headwinds of their own, including major divisions over the direction of their party and a cash crunch at the Democratic National Committee. Starting in Michigan, where President Trump lauded his administration's record on the economy, highlighting his tariff policy as a benefit for the auto industry, and saying that the next president will see the results. And this all comes as the president is significantly underwater on the economy and inflation in recent polling. The president has told reporters he is not concerned about the war's impact on the midterms, but he has repeatedly pledged that prices would fall once the war was over, last week asking voters to give him more time. And oil fell today on renewed hopes for diplomatic talks after the administration paused strikes. Prices at the pump remain elevated with no clear path to end the conflict as the war enters its fifth month. While the economic headwinds hit the president and his party, Democrats are facing something of a financial crisis of their own at party headquarters, facing a major cash crunch. The New York Times reporting Democratic Party leaders are asking vendors not to send bills until after the midterm elections, while Notice reports the Democratic National Committee put its Washington, D.C. headquarters up as collateral to obtain a loan last year. At the center of the storm, DNC Chair Ken Martin, who has struggled to rehabilitate his party's image after the 2024 election. Asked yesterday about Martin's leadership, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries expressed his confidence in the chairman during a campaign event with Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro.
Can you comment on the report that the DNC is broke and that and wondering if the chairman of the DNC still has your full support?
Yes, the chairman has my full support. What we've seen over the last 18 plus months is that Democrats have won every single meaningful election up and down the ballot across the country during that period of time. And we look forward to our continued partnership.
This also comes as the party prepares for another bruising primary next week, highlighting the tensions between progressives and moderates as Congresswoman Haley Stevens takes on progressive Abdul Al-Sayed in next week's Democratic Senate race in Michigan. Joining me now is NBC's chief White House correspondent, Garrett Haake. And with me here on set is national political reporter Ben Kamisar. Thank you both so much for being here. Garrett, I want to start with you. The president's speaking right now in Michigan. How much is he staying focused on these economic issues?
Well, Gabe, it's always a bit of a sliding scale with President Trump, but I think the White House would be pleased with what they've seen from the president in these remarks in Michigan today. He has made weaves onto issues like Iran. He's talked about the beautification of cities like Washington, D.C., but he has also focused substantially on the One Big Beautiful Bill, as it was called, his no tax on tips policy. He's spoken about the auto industry, which is, of course, a big deal in Michigan, and he has just finished introducing, before I was walking out to the camera, the slate of Republicans who are running in some big contested races there for governor and for Senate in particular, giving the picture that I think all of those folks want as they try to recapture his 2024 magic. So with President Trump, it's always a little bit of everything, but the economic message is, at least to some degree, coming through.
You know, earlier today on his way to Michigan on Air Force One, he also spoke again about the Save America Act. He's been pushing for that, as you know, and he's been pushing the Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, and Senate Republicans to really pass that. Of course, Thune has repeatedly said that he doesn't have the votes. What's the president's frustration level right now with Thune?
Well, his frustration level in general is high when it comes to the Save America Act. He's been talking about it, bringing it up at every opportunity for months now. But whether his frustration is specifically with John Thune or not, it's a little bit difficult to say. Publicly, the president has insisted this is not about replacing John Thune. And you hear from Republican senators all the time that they feel like Thune has done a pretty good job of figuring out how to communicate directly with Trump without raising his ire on issues like this. But nevertheless, it is Thune who's sort of in the crosshairs as the decision maker in the Senate. But I think the president knows and is certainly being told by his staff that John Thune cannot make votes appear where they don't otherwise exist. Now, Thune could make this painful for Republican senators and insist that they do what the president has asked and stay here in Washington through August. not passing the SAVE Act, but that's highly unlikely to change any Republicans' minds on the act itself or on getting rid of the filibuster, which this is ultimately about.
And Garrett, is there any concern among Republicans that he's focusing on this bill at the expense of other issues that could actually help the party overcome these political headwinds we've been talking about ahead of the midterms?
Yeah, definitely. I will say you hear that more so from some of these Republicans who will not be coming back in the next Congress, folks like Bill Cassidy or John Cornyn, who've already lost their primaries. They view these bills as somewhat backward looking. You know, that while they have publicly all said that they think some of the priorities in here, like higher voter ID requirements and so forth, are legitimate and good things for Republicans to be focusing on, that this bill itself, without the votes to advance it, is just talking about something that can't be done.
Garrett Haake, live for us at the White House. Garrett, thank you. I want to turn now to Ben. And let's turn now to the Democrats' turmoil. How big a deal are these money issues, and what might they mean for cash-strapped Democrats and candidates in key races like Maine?
Yeah, it's the $1 billion question, right? And there's not an easy answer. On one hand, yes, the Democrats have been massively outraised and outspent by their Republican counterparts. Particularly, it's the spending piece, right? You know, it's obvious that their party in power always raises more, but for Republicans to be sitting on a $100+ million nest egg and for Democrats to be in debt, that's a kind of comparison that is just very bad, not just for the, you know, for the story and for the rhetoric, but it's also just, that is money that can be used to help win races, right? There's this new Supreme Court case, which I won't sort of bore you all with, but basically it makes that money more powerful. And so, yes, that's a problem, but also the flip side is Democrats are pointing to a lot of the operatics and a lot of the president's polling numbers, and they think and they hope that that's kind of operatics and sort of mood of the midterms is going to help them.
And what does this all mean for the DNC chair, Ken Martin? We just heard right there Hakeem Jeffries sticking by him, but are other rank-and-file Democrats really growing more frustrated here? You're
seeing some cracks, but not a flood. And ultimately, I think there's kind of two things here, right? First off, this is the DNC is a membership-driven organization. We like to think about these party organizations as being the head of the party. They're also just sort of the president of this small group of membership, right? And so far, there hasn't been a public exodus of the members. And hopefully in Ken Martin's mind, hopefully he thinks that he can get through the midterms and then ultimately push on to 2028. The question will be what happens at that pivot point. Will the party be happy enough to let him continue?
Well, looking ahead to 2028, this all comes after Friday. The Party Rules Committee recommended that the 2028 primary order start with South Carolina for Democrats. Now, some progressives are saying that this is all meant to stop their momentum. What do you make of that argument?
I make that we've really not moved on past the 2016 election, right? Like the progressives have not really fixed their relationship with the DNC ever since the 2016 primary, where they felt like the party was putting their thumb on the scale against them. Everything that's happened in the Democratic Party since kind of points to that. I think that debate is still part of that argument, but I think being in the room, the debate was among the membership was not about progressive. It was not about establishment. It was strictly about which state, what the order here. And frankly, the big lean on South Carolina, Democrats really pointed to in the wake of the Supreme Court decision on the Voting Rights Act, in the wake of redistricting that's going to carve up a lot of these black majority seats. And that was far more weighing on these members' minds than any sort of progressive fight.
South Carolina versus Nevada, black voters versus Latinos, really the party trying to figure out what its identity is for years to come. Ben Kamisar, thank you so much. I want to turn now to Jaime Harrison, former chair of the Democratic National Committee. Mr. Harrison, thank you so much for joining us here on Meet the Press Now.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to start with the troubles facing the DNC at the moment, as we were just discussing with Ben. As former chair of the party, is this a leadership issue or an environment issue?
Well, listen, I think every chair inherits a different set of circumstances. So, I was fortunate to begin with a Democratic president in the White House. Ken is leading during a very different political environment, right? I was in the DNC in 2018 when Tom Perez, in a very similar fashion, inherited a DNC after coming after a presidential election loss. I mean, when you even take a look at the cash on hand, we didn't have a whole lot of money in 2018 at the DNC. I think if you compare where we were in 2018 on cash in hand, where the DNC is now, I think we had in 2018 $9 million. I think the DNC has 16 million. We were in 2018 $6 million in debt. I think this DNC is about 18 million. So all in all, it was around the same space. But I want people to remember, and this is why it's important to understand the history behind all of this stuff. We still won 41 seats in the House of Representatives in 2018. Right? So the House is not on fire. This is what happens coming off of a presidential election loss. So you got to continue to cultivate those grassroots donors. You got to go to those major donors, and they will come back as we get closer to the election. But you really, really have to focus on the energy right now. And that is the energy's with us in terms of winning these races in special elections.
Well, I think some of the concern, though, among Democrats now is, not just your cash on hand, but also the fact that Republicans have been very strong fundraising numbers at this point. And as we were just talking about with Ben, he just walked us through the cash issues that the DNC is facing, that cash crunch. Are you concerned about what this will eventually mean for the party's chances of retaking the House or Senate?
No, I'm not. When you take a look at our individual candidates, they're doing better than their Republican counterparts, the people who they're running against in terms of raising money. The DS and the DSCC and the DCCC are on par with their counterparts there. But and in the end, yes, Donald Trump is sitting on $400 million. But do we actually think Donald Trump is going to spend that on anybody other than Donald Trump? The history tells us that he won't. And so it's really, really important for us to continue to support our candidates as much as we possibly can. Send your contributions into your candidates of choice, but also make sure that you understand that we are really focusing on sending resources to our parties in the state parties so that they can compete as well.
Why do you think that is, though? Why do you think candidates are doing so well fundraising on their own instead of the DNC?
Because, again, I think the DNC is one of those, it's the carte blanche. You go online right now and, people will blame the DNC for everything. If the sky is gray, they say, well, it's the DNC that caused the sky to be gray, right? And so, therefore, that sometimes that reflects on these national committees. And it's not unique to the DNC. When the RNC is out of power, out of the White House, it's the same type of thing. It's just that these major committees really absorb all of the negativity out there about being outside of power, while the candidates provide a fresh face, a fresh choice, and that's where people want to send their dollars.
Well, the DNC Rules Committee also on Friday, as we mentioned, recommended that the order for the 2020 presidential primaries, starting with South Carolina, then Nevada, New Hampshire, New Mexico, Michigan, and Virginia, all before Super Tuesday. Now, of course, I know you're happy to see South Carolina first, but what message do you think the larger batch of states sends about the party's priorities here?
Well, I'm very, very pleased by this calendar, and I think it reflects the diversity of this party, and it looks like the modern-day Democratic Party. And I think putting South Carolina first means that candidates begin by talking to communities that too often are asked to wait until later on, particularly black voters. Black voters don't simply deserve to ratify a nominee after the field has narrowed, and that's the role that South Carolina has played historically. But they now deserve to help shape the field from day one, to make sure that the issues that are really important for them and their communities are ones that are being discussed at the very beginning of this presidential process. And look, Nevada is also going to play that role as the number two as well. When you see in the past, Iowa and New Hampshire have had an outsized influence, and now you have two states that are very diverse that will play that role at least in this 2028 election cycle.
And you've said that South Carolina first works because its Democratic base is not conservative or progressive, but that they're pragmatic. What do you say to progressives who say that the state's moderate sensibilities are exactly why it should not be first, and that it's meant to blunt progressive momentum within the party?
Well, the example that the progressives then give you is Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders didn't lose in South Carolina because he was progressive. Bernie Sanders lost in South Carolina because he didn't put the grassroots operation on the ground to build a type of operation to convince people to support him. Remember, this is the state of Jesse Jackson. 1988, Jesse Jackson and that progressive platform that he had, and guess what? He won South Carolina. Right. So if you want to win South Carolina, you can't use this state as a flyover state. You only come in for a few days and then you think that's all you need to do. You got to build the operation, just like you would go to Iowa and New Hampshire and rub elbows and go to the state fairs and go to all. Well, now you got to go to the HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. You got to go to the churches. You got to go to the barbershops. You got to go to the VFWs. You have to make sure that you build a grassroots operation. So I say to progressives, moderates, and conservatives, come and build an operation in South Carolina and make your case to these voters, because they are pragmatic. If they see that, and they can sniff out BS. If you are not going to if they don't believe that you are going to fight for them and their families and their communities, then they're not going to support you.
Mr. Harrison, last month you posted on X, quote, "I say this with no ill will or animosity. If you hate the Democratic Party, then please don't run for our nomination." Were you referencing specific candidates with that post?
Well, I was, I know a lot of people like to make it out. I've been saying that now for months. I said it back in August or September of last year, that I see more and more that people are getting a lot of political credibility out on the Twitter streets by dogging out the Democratic Party, throwing mud on the Democratic Party. And I don't care if you're progressive, I don't care if you're moderate or conservative. I think it's important. If you want this party to be strong to fight back against fascism, then you can't try to demonize and destroy the party in the process in order to just get a little cachet.
Well, you also posted that on the night that several Mamdani-backed candidates did well in New York. Are you saying that had nothing to do with that?
I actually posted that prior to we even knowing who won those elections that night. There's a lot of things that I'm paying a close attention to. I know, like a lot of folks in New York think that New York is the center of the world, but it ain't the center of my world. So a nice place to visit.
nothing to do with Mamdani, you're saying? No,
I mean, and I praise Mayor Mamdani, and I think he's doing a really good job. And listen, I don't think he's one of those people who is trying to destroy the party or trying to throw mud on the party, right? I think reading comprehension is really, really important here. If you are not hating on the Democratic Party, if you're not trying to destroy the Democratic Party, then what I said does not apply to you.
Jaime Harrison, former DNC chair, thank you so much for your time here on Meet the Press Now. We appreciate it.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.